The first signs of trouble did not emerge from a public engagement or an official palace announcement. They surfaced behind closed doors, where discussions about the future of the monarchy are rarely meant to leave the room. Yet within hours, whispers began spreading through royal corridors. Princess Catherine, usually known for her calm diplomacy and careful respect for tradition, had reportedly raised serious objections to a proposal that would fundamentally change how senior royals conducted official engagements. What seemed like a routine administrative adjustment was rapidly becoming something much bigger. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, few people outside the palace paid any attention to the discussions. Administrative reviews occur regularly within royal operations and most never attract public interest. But according to insiders, this proposal was different. Reports suggest that senior palace officials had been considering a significant overhaul of royal engagement protocols, one designed to centralize oversight of public appearances and streamline how senior members of the family interacted with organizations, charities, and local communities. Supporters of the proposal reportedly argued that the monarchy needed a more coordinated approach to public duties, particularly as expectations surrounding royal engagements continued to evolve. On paper, the plan appeared efficient. Yet efficiency, as Catherine allegedly recognized, is not always the same as effectiveness. Sources familiar with the matter claim that Catherine's concerns emerged almost immediately. For years, she has carefully built a reputation around direct engagement, personal connection, and genuine involvement with the causes she supports. According to reports, she worried that some aspects of the proposed system risked creating additional distance between senior royals and the communities they serve. While nobody disputed the need for organization, Catherine reportedly questioned whether centralization could unintentionally weaken one of the monarchy's greatest strengths, the ability to establish personal relationships through direct contact and sustained involvement. The concerns quickly attracted attention because they touched on a larger philosophical question. What should the modern monarchy look like? Should it prioritize efficiency, consistency, and centralized planning? Or should it preserve a more flexible approach that allows individual members of the royal family to build unique relationships with different sectors of society? These questions reportedly transformed what began as a technical discussion into a much broader debate about the institution's future direction. Meanwhile, Prince William is said to have quietly supported calls for further review. According to palace insiders, he did not immediately take a public position, but he reportedly agreed that the proposals deserved closer examination before any final decisions were made. His involvement added considerable significance to the discussions. As future king, William's perspective carries weight not only because of his position, but because many view him as a bridge between tradition and modernization. Reports suggest he understood the appeal of reform while also recognizing the value of preserving the human connections that have long defined royal service. As the debate intensified, divisions reportedly emerged among courtiers and advisors. Some argued that modernization was essential if the monarchy hoped to remain relevant in an increasingly complex world. Others warned that excessive restructuring could undermine traditions that had helped sustain public trust for generations. The disagreement was not necessarily hostile, but it was significant. Both sides believed they were acting in the best interests of the crown. That made compromise far more difficult to achieve. Then came the development that transformed an internal discussion into a public story. Information reportedly began leaking from palace circles. Details remained fragmented, but enough emerged to spark speculation among royal observers and journalists. Questions quickly followed. Why was Catherine concerned? What exactly did the proposed changes involve? And why were senior figures reportedly divided over their implementation? The absence of official explanations only fueled greater curiosity. As rumors continued spreading, public interest grew rapidly. Every unanswered question generated another. Every whisper seemed to point toward a deeper issue lurking beneath the surface. What had started as a conversation about engagement protocols was beginning to reveal competing visions for the future of the monarchy itself. And with each passing day, it became increasingly clear that the stakes were much higher than anyone had initially imagined. But what initially appeared to be a disagreement over scheduling and appearances soon revealed a deeper struggle over who would shape the monarchy's future identity. Royal protocols are rarely altered without careful consideration, but insiders claim this proposal arrived with unusual urgency. Behind the polished language of modernization stood a plan that some believed would fundamentally redefine how members of the royal family interacted with the public. As debate surrounding the proposed engagement reforms intensified, more details reportedly began circulating among senior aides and advisors. What initially appeared to be a modest administrative adjustment gradually revealed itself as something far more ambitious. According to sources within royal circles, the proposal sought to establish a greater level of centralized oversight over how official engagements were planned, approved, and executed. Supporters described the changes as practical, arguing that a more coordinated structure would improve efficiency, reduce duplication of efforts, and create a clearer public message. Yet critics reportedly saw something very different. To them, the reforms represented a significant shift in how royal service itself would function. Reports suggest that under the proposed framework, palace committees would exercise increased authority over public appearances and charitable activities traditionally managed with greater flexibility by senior royals. On paper, such oversight appeared logical. Modern institutions often rely on centralized structures to maintain consistency. However, within the unique environment of the monarchy, consistency has never been the only priority. Individual relationships, personal commitments, and long-term connections to communities have often played an equally important role. That reality reportedly became one of Catherine's central concerns. According to insiders, Catherine worried that the proposed changes could unintentionally weaken the visibility of local organizations and causes that depend heavily on direct royal support. Over the years, many charitable initiatives have benefited not because they were part of a centralized strategy, but because individual members of the royal family developed genuine interest in their work. Those personal connections often created opportunities that might never have emerged through administrative planning alone. Sources claim Catherine feared that introducing additional layers of approval could make it more difficult for smaller organizations to receive attention, potentially shifting focus toward broader institutional priorities at the expense of local impact. As discussions continued, attention increasingly turned toward another controversial aspect of the proposal, the reported reduction of independent initiatives traditionally championed by senior royals. For decades, members of the royal family have enjoyed a degree of autonomy in selecting causes aligned with their interests and experiences. That freedom has helped create distinctive public roles for different royals, allowing them to build meaningful relationships with various sectors of society. Critics of the proposal reportedly questioned whether excessive centralization might gradually erode that flexibility, replacing personal commitment with administrative uniformity. At the same time, reports emerged suggesting that several long-standing traditions connected to royal engagements were being placed under review. While supporters insisted that modernization was necessary to ensure long-term relevance, opponents worried that some customs were being reconsidered without sufficient appreciation for their historical value. Within the monarchy, traditions often survive not because they are convenient, but because they serve symbolic purposes developed over generations. Altering them can sometimes create consequences that are not immediately apparent. The growing controversy reportedly left palace staff increasingly divided. Some believed the reforms represented a necessary evolution, one capable of helping the institution adapt to contemporary expectations. Others viewed them as a step too far, warning that efficiency should never come at the expense of authenticity. The divide was not simply about policy. It reflected fundamentally different visions of what royal service should look like in the future. As these competing perspectives collided, a new question began emerging with increasing frequency. Who truly benefited from the changes? Were the reforms primarily designed to strengthen the institution, or were they being driven by a broader agenda regarding the monarchy's future direction? According to insiders, this question lingered behind every meeting, every briefing, and every private conversation. The more details surfaced, the more difficult it became to dismiss those concerns. And for Catherine, that growing uncertainty reportedly proved impossible to ignore. What had started as a review of engagement procedures was becoming something much, a debate about influence, identity, and the values that would shape the crown for years to come. Yet the more Catherine examined the proposal, the more she became convinced that something far more significant was at stake. There are moments when silence becomes impossible. According to Palace Whispers, Catherine reached that moment after reviewing the full implications of the proposed reforms. What followed surprised even some of her closest supporters. For much of the controversy, Catherine had reportedly approached the discussions with her characteristic caution. Those familiar with her public role often describe her as measured, diplomatic, and careful when navigating sensitive institutional matters. That reputation made the developments that followed all the more significant. According to insiders, after studying the proposed engagement reforms in greater detail, she concluded that the debate was no longer simply about administration or efficiency. It had become a question of philosophy. More specifically, it had become a question about what royal service was meant to represent in the modern age. Reports suggest that Catherine chose to voice her concerns formally during a series of internal discussions involving senior advisors and palace officials. Sources claim her objections were not emotional or confrontational. Instead, they were described as deliberate, carefully reasoned, and focused on long-term consequences. At the center of her argument was a principle she reportedly considered fundamental to the monarchy's success: the importance of authentic public engagement. According to those familiar with the meetings, Catherine believed the institution's greatest strength lay not in its structures or ceremonies alone, but in its ability to create meaningful connections with ordinary people across the country. That concern reportedly shaped much of her position. While supporters of the reforms continued emphasizing coordination and efficiency, Catherine is said to have questioned whether those goals might come at an unintended cost. If royal engagements became too carefully managed, too heavily controlled, or too dependent upon centralized approval processes, would something important be lost? According to Palace Whispers, she worried that spontaneity, personal commitment, and genuine connection could gradually be replaced by administrative precision. The result, she allegedly warned, could be a monarchy that appeared organized but felt increasingly distant. For Catherine, this was not merely a theoretical concern. Over the years, she had reportedly witnessed firsthand how local organizations, community leaders, and charitable groups responded to direct royal involvement. Those interactions often created lasting relationships, capable of generating awareness and support long after a visit ended. Sources suggest she feared that reducing flexibility might unintentionally weaken those connections. In her view, efficiency mattered, but relationships mattered too, and finding the right balance between the two was essential. Perhaps most significant was the growing sense that William and Catherine were approaching the issue together. According to insiders, the couple increasingly presented a united front during discussions. While William reportedly continued listening to multiple perspectives, sources suggest he shared many of Catherine's concerns regarding the preservation of meaningful public engagement. Their alignment reportedly strengthened the position of those advocating a more cautious approach to reform. What had initially seemed like an isolated objection was now becoming part of a broader argument, supported by some of the monarchy's most influential future leaders. As the debate intensified, reports indicate that several senior advisors quietly rallied behind their position. Not all opposed modernization. In fact, many reportedly agreed that certain reforms might be beneficial. Yet they also believed Catherine had identified legitimate risks that deserved careful consideration. Their support added new momentum to the discussions and made it increasingly difficult for advocates of rapid change to dismiss the concerns being raised. The atmosphere inside palace meetings reportedly became noticeably more tense. Conversations that once focused on procedural details now carried deeper significance. Every proposal seemed to represent more than a policy choice. Every recommendation appeared connected to larger questions about identity, purpose, and direction. What kind of monarchy should emerge in the years ahead? How should it balance tradition with adaptation? And who should ultimately decide where that balance is found? Gradually, the disagreement evolved from a debate about engagement protocols into something much larger, a battle of principles. On one side stood those who believed greater centralization would strengthen the institution. On the other stood those who feared that too much control could weaken the personal connections that gave royal service its meaning. Both sides believed they were protecting the crown. Both believed the future depended upon their approach. But resistance from Catherine only intensified efforts by those determined to push the reforms forward. Every institution eventually faces a crossroads. For the monarchy, reports suggest that this debate exposed two competing visions of royal service, one focused on modernization, the other on preserving traditions that had defined generations of public duty. What had started as a disagreement over engagement protocols was now evolving into something far more consequential. According to palace insiders, the discussion was no longer confined to administrative meetings or policy reviews. It had become a broader debate about identity, purpose, and the future role of the royal family itself. As details continued emerging from private conversations, observers began noticing what many described as the formation of informal factions within royal circles. These were not official groups, nor were they openly acknowledged. Yet reports suggested that individuals throughout the institution were increasingly aligning themselves with one of two competing philosophies. On one side stood supporters of reform. According to those familiar with their thinking, they believed change was not simply desirable but necessary. The monarchy, they argued, operates in a world vastly different from the one that shaped many of its traditions. Public expectations evolve, communication changes, society transforms. In their view, the institution's survival depended upon its ability to adapt. They reportedly saw centralized engagement planning as part of a broader effort to ensure consistency, efficiency, and relevance in an era where public attention is more fragmented than ever before. To them, modernization was not a threat. It was a strategy for long-term stability. Yet on the other side stood those who viewed the proposals with growing concern. Traditionalists reportedly warned that adaptation should never come at the expense of principles that had proven successful across generations. They argued that the monarchy's strength comes not from behaving like every other modern institution, but from preserving qualities that make it unique. According to insiders, many feared that excessive restructuring risked weakening the personal connections that have historically defined royal service. Efficiency, they argued, cannot replace authenticity, procedures cannot replace relationships, and public trust cannot be sustained through organization alone. As these competing viewpoints gained momentum, senior household figures reportedly began entering the discussion more actively. Some had remained silent during the early stages, choosing to observe rather than participate. But as the stakes grew higher, their involvement became increasingly difficult to avoid. Sources suggest that experienced advisors, long-serving officials, and respected institutional figures started offering perspectives shaped by decades of experience. Their participation added weight to the debate and reinforced the growing perception that this issue extended far beyond scheduling reforms. Meanwhile, outside palace walls, media speculation intensified. Every new leak generated fresh headlines. Every rumor produced additional questions. Journalists searched for clues. Commentators offered competing interpretations. royal watchers analyzed even the smallest developments for signs of what might happen next. The absence of official explanations only deepened public fascination. What exactly was being debated? Why had Catherine reportedly taken such a strong position? And why did so many insiders seem convinced that the outcome carried significance beyond the immediate proposals? As curiosity expanded, Catherine herself gradually became a symbolic figure within the unfolding controversy. Reports suggest that many supporters of continuity began viewing her as a representative of stability, tradition, and measured evolution. This was not necessarily because she opposed all change. Rather, according to Palace Whispers, she emphasized the importance of ensuring that modernization strengthened, rather than diluted, the monarchy's connection with the public. Her position resonated with those who believed that royal service should remain personal, visible, and grounded in direct engagement with communities. The result was a debate that seemed to grow larger with every passing week. What had once appeared to be an internal policy discussion was now being interpreted as a reflection of broader questions facing the crown. How much should change? How much should remain the same? And who should ultimately determine where that balance is found? Those questions lingered over every conversation, every briefing, and every private consultation. As the divide widened, attention shifted toward one crucial question: who would ultimately decide the future direction of the crown? While Catherine's concerns dominated private discussions, another figure was watching carefully. Prince William understood that the issue extended beyond engagement schedules. It touched the very relationship between the monarchy and the people it served. As the debate surrounding the proposed reforms continued to divide opinion within palace circles, William reportedly began conducting his own detailed review of the recommendations. According to insiders, he approached the issue with growing seriousness, recognizing that the decisions being considered would not simply affect current royal operations. They could influence how future generations of royals connected with the public for decades to come. For William, the discussion was no longer about administrative efficiency or organizational structure. It was about preserving a relationship that sits at the heart of the monarchy's relevance, the bond between the crown and the communities it exists to serve. Sources suggest that one of William's primary concerns centered on the long-term implications of reducing flexibility in royal engagements. Throughout modern royal history, individual members of the family have often developed lasting relationships with local organizations, charities, and community initiatives. Those connections have helped create trust, visibility, and a sense of personal commitment that many believe cannot be replicated through centralized planning alone. According to reports, William questioned whether the proposed system might gradually weaken those ties, replacing genuine engagement with a more controlled and distant approach. As these concerns gained prominence, senior advisors were reportedly tasked with examining alternative options. Rather than accepting or rejecting the reforms outright, discussions began focusing on whether compromise solutions could address efficiency concerns while preserving traditional forms of public interaction. According to Palace Whispers, several revised approaches were explored behind closed doors. The existence of these conversations alone suggested that momentum was beginning to shift. What had once seemed like an inevitable modernization initiative was now facing increasingly rigorous scrutiny. That shift reportedly accelerated as William became more actively involved. Sources claim his influence changed the tone of the debate. Rather than framing the issue as a conflict between progress and tradition, he encouraged discussions about balance, sustainability, and public trust. His involvement reportedly reassured those who feared that important traditions were being overlooked, while also keeping the door open for carefully considered reforms. For many observers, this represented a significant turning point. According to accounts circulating among royal observers, a pivotal meeting eventually got together the individuals responsible for shaping the future of the proposal. Expectations were high, so were tensions. By the time participants gathered, weeks of debate had already transformed a policy review into one of the most consequential internal discussions in recent memory. Senior officials reportedly arrived prepared to present competing arguments regarding the future direction of royal engagement strategy. Supporters of reform emphasized efficiency, coordination, and modernization. Opponents highlighted continuity, accessibility, and the value of direct community relationships. The atmosphere, according to insiders, reflected the significance of the moment. Everyone understood that the outcome could influence the monarchy's public role for years to come. Sources suggest Catherine played a particularly important role during these discussions. Reports claim she made a passionate case for preserving traditions that foster authentic public engagement. Rather than focusing solely on procedural details, she reportedly emphasized the human element of royal service, the relationships, trust, and visibility that develop when members of the royal family engage directly with communities. Her arguments, combined with William's emphasis on public trust and accessibility, reportedly resonated with several participants who had previously remained undecided. As the meeting progressed, concerns about long-term consequences increasingly dominated the conversation. What would happen if royal work became too centralized? Could efficiency inadvertently create distance? Might the institution lose some of the qualities that make it unique? According to insiders, these questions prompted several figures to reconsider their positions. Gradually, momentum appeared to move away from the original proposal. Yet despite that shift, uncertainty remained. The reforms had not been formally defeated. The future still hung in the balance. And when that confrontation finally arrived, it transformed a private disagreement into a defining royal moment. Yet even as the meeting ended, uncertainty remained over whether the battle had truly been won. For days, silence followed. No announcements, no briefings, no confirmation of what had been decided. But behind the scenes, reports suggest that the balance of power was beginning to change. In the aftermath of the pivotal meetings that had consumed palace attention for weeks, an unusual quiet settled over the institution. To the public, it appeared as though nothing had happened. Official schedules continued. Public appearances proceeded. Palace representatives offered no indication that one of the most significant internal debates in recent memory had taken place. Yet according to insiders, the silence masked a period of intense activity. Discussions had not ended. They had simply moved deeper behind closed doors, where recommendations were being reviewed, revised, and reconsidered with increasing caution. Sources suggest that revised proposals soon began circulating among senior officials. The changes were subtle at first, but their significance quickly became apparent. Several of the measures that had generated the strongest criticism reportedly faced renewed scrutiny. Recommendations once presented as essential elements of modernization were quietly reassessed. Questions raised by Catherine and her supporters were no longer being treated as obstacles to progress. Instead, they were increasingly viewed as legitimate concerns, deserving serious consideration. What had started as resistance was gradually becoming influence. According to reports, some of the most controversial aspects of the original proposal were either modified or removed entirely during this review process. While palace officials remained committed to improving coordination and efficiency, there appeared to be growing recognition that certain traditions served purposes extending far beyond administration. Public engagement was not merely a logistical exercise. It was one of the monarchy's most visible expressions of service. Preserving that connection, insiders claimed, became an increasingly important priority as discussions progressed. As this shift unfolded, Catherine's position reportedly gained broader support within the institution. Her warnings about distancing the monarchy from local communities now appeared more difficult to dismiss. Sources suggest that advisors who had initially remained neutral began acknowledging the value of her arguments. Others reportedly concluded that modernization and tradition did not have to exist in opposition. The challenge was finding a balance capable of protecting both. That realization gradually transformed the tone of the debate. Meanwhile, signs of change began attracting attention beyond palace walls. Observers noticed subtle indications that the original plans were being reconsidered. Journalists who had followed the story closely detected what some described as a quiet policy reversal. No official announcement confirmed such speculation, but the absence of certain reforms and the reappearance of previously questioned traditions fueled growing belief that momentum had shifted. What had once seemed inevitable now appeared uncertain. Perhaps most significantly, the episode brought Catherine's influence within the institution into sharper focus. For years, she had been regarded as a dependable and respected member of the royal family. Yet this controversy reportedly revealed another dimension of her role. According to insiders, she demonstrated a willingness to defend principles she believed were essential to the monarchy's future. Her intervention was not portrayed as opposition to change itself, but as a call for thoughtful, measured evolution, rather than rapid transformation. In the end, this was never simply about protocols, calendars, or administrative procedures. It was about the soul of royal service itself. The question at the heart of the conflict was whether the monarchy would continue relying on the personal connections that had sustained it for generations or replace them with something far more distant. As the dust gradually settled, reports suggested that many of the proposed changes had been scaled back or reconsidered. Public-facing duties retained their emphasis on community engagement. William's support reportedly reinforced the growing consensus that modernization must strengthen rather than weaken public trust. The palace, according to observers, emerged from the dispute with a renewed appreciation for the delicate balance between heritage and progress. The episode became a defining chapter in the monarchy's evolving story. Catherine's leadership earned renewed respect among supporters, while William demonstrated the careful judgment expected of a future king. More importantly, the institution itself appeared to absorb a valuable lesson. Change remains necessary. Adaptation remains inevitable. But not every tradition is an obstacle. Some traditions are foundations. But the true significance of the episode would only become clear once the dust settled. And as the palace gates closed once more, and the headlines gradually faded, one lesson remained unmistakably clear. Institutions survive not merely through change, but through knowing which traditions are too valuable to abandon. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.